This is the Happy Diabetic Kitchen Podcast, episode number 7. This is the Happy Diabetic Kitchen, the podcast about people who love to eat and cook healthy. This is your guide to the world of healthy cooking and conversation about happy diabetic living and lifestyles, where we turn ordinary ingredients into something extraordinary. Welcome to the kitchen and let's get cooking. Hello everyone, I am Chef Robert Lewis, the Happy Diabetic, and this is the internet's most delicious cooking podcast. Welcome to my kitchen. Great to be here this week with engineer producer Jason. How you doing, Jace?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Really great. Good to be back in the studio, don't you think?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So on last week's episode, we talked about grass-fed beef. And at the end, we did that little taste test. And I took some of those leftovers home. And I have to say that I really found that grass-fed growing on me over the next couple days.
Yeah, I agree. I had a chance to go out and eat last week, and I actually tried a grass-fed hamburger, which I don't think I've ever had any grass-fed ground beef. Have you?
How was that? I have, actually. It was a while ago, though, and I don't know if my palate was really, I don't know, refined enough to really tell the difference at the time.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. Tender. Of course, I like my beef like medium rare when it comes to burgers. It's not what everybody goes for, but I like it like that. And I don't know. I thought it was good. It was delish.
Was it? Is grass-fed beef leaner than regular?
You know what? That's a great question. I'm gonna call my buddy Neil, who we interviewed in our last episode about that. But I think quite often it is leaner. I think it is. Yeah, and that's where all the flavor is, right? In that good fat.
Right.
So, but today, what I thought we would chat about is another issue that I come across at the farmer's market a lot. Of course, we're approaching that season. Is the term organic.
Right.
I mean, if that's not the most misused or misunderstood word in the English eating vocabulary, I'm not sure what is.
Why do you say that?
Well, because I'm always confused about what it really means. Because I don't think, I think it's just confusing. Is it pesticides? Is it, the seeds that the farmer uses? I'm not really sure. So I just thought we would explore that topic today and try to take the mystery out of organic and really what does it mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a great recipe this week. It's my wild teriyaki salmon. And we're going to talk a little bit about the term organic as it relates to meat and fish, because I did discover some interesting things about that. So that's a really great recipe. We'll have the Ask Chef Robert, where we take listener questions of the week. And we've got some great questions. They're flooding in. So I'm excited to answer that question. And our famous cooking tip that you can't live without. So what do you think, Jason? Should we get cranking?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Teriyaki salmon of love is the recipe of this week's podcast. Now, I did discover that the USDA does not have a standard when it applies to organic when it comes to fish. Although I did see lots of references to organic salmon, it actually doesn't exist. The reality is there is farm-raised salmon and wild salmon. There is a difference. And oftentimes the wild salmon is preferable to farm-raised because of the fish meal often given to fish raised in farms. The fish meal is often made of ingredients like animal byproducts from the milling of food processing industries, or it contains additives to color the salmon and give it that kind of salmony looking reddish flesh color. But I've eaten both, and quite honestly, I prefer the wild. But I have had great farm raised salmon, so really whatever your market has, I think we can create into an amazing dish. But when shopping for salmon, you always want to look for fresh, firm fillets, right? And one thing I do know about wild salmon, it is free of preservatives. So, but marketers like to trick you by also looking for the word wild opposed to Atlantic or Pacific, naming the waters that they were raised in. And it can really vary. So, I don't know. It's buyer beware. Ask your fish purveyor, or what they call a monger, and he can guide and direct you to what would be the best fish and the freshest that they've got in the market. So let's get into the recipe. What's in this salmon recipe? Well, it's super easy because it's 4 6-ounce center-cut salmon fillets with the skin on. I prefer it because there's good flavor there, but not necessary. And then my teriyaki sauce. It's super basic. We're going to make about 1 cup. And this is what's in the basic teriyaki sauce. It's a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And I like to recommend low sodium whenever you can do it. 1/2 cup of cold water. 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. 4 to 5 tablespoons of honey to taste. And in a small pot, whisk the soy sauce, water, and the cornstarch together while it's cold and make it nice and smooth. Now, you can add any other kind of ingredients like garlic or ginger or vinegar, oregano, cracked pepper. It's up to you. It's really kind of fun to make these teriyaki sauces very personal. For me, I like ginger and I like garlic. I also like a little onion powder. That works really great. So I'm going to bring it to a boil over some medium heat until it's warm, and then I'm going to whisk in the honey at the very end till it's dissolved. So when it's at a boil, I'm going to reduce it to a medium, whisk it nice until it's get the right thickness that I like. And for me, I like it when I can put a spoon in and the sauce will coat the back of the spoon. Kind of stays on there nice. That's the thickness I'm looking at. Now, don't leave it unattended because it can get thick very quickly once it gets to the boiling stage, and it can burn very quick. So once it comes to a boil, you've got your thickness, take it off the heat, and really you're ready to go. Make any last-minute taste adjustments. If it's too thick, you can add a little additional water or some vinegar or some white wine to get that desired consistency you're looking for. Alrighty, so now I'm going to remove any bones from the salmon and I'll discard them. Now, your fishmonger at your supermarket would be happy to do this. And quite honestly, all the fish fillets that I bought here recently are very well deboned, so you shouldn't have to worry about it. I'm going to place the salmon in a bowl or a shallow casserole dish, and I'm going to cover it with the teriyaki sauce. I'm going to marinate it for about 20 minutes. Next, I'm going to remove the salmon from the marinade. Reserve the teriyaki sauce off to the side. I'm going to season each salmon fillet with some fresh cracked pepper. Now, I'm going to heat 1 large nonstick skillet until it's super hot. I'm going to put the salmon skin side up in the pan and cook it over medium heat for about 3 to 5 minutes. Flip the salmon over and cook it for another 3 to 6 minutes. The salmon should start to flake when done. Now, I'm going to take some scallions and finely dice them, so I have about 1/2 cup. I'm going to take the extra teriyaki glaze that was in the salmon. I'm going to heat it up, bring it to a quick boil, just to get it nice and hot. So the salmon's done on the plate, a little of the teriyaki glaze on top of that, and then a light dusting of those nice, fresh, green scallions. That's it. My teriyaki salmon of love. I'll have that posted on my website under my blog listing, so check it out. Let me know. Take a picture, post it on my Facebook page, and let the world see what amazing chefs you are.
So when I think organic, I think no chemical pesticides. Is it that black and white, or are there some chemical pesticides that are allowed to be categorized as organic?
There are some pesticides that are allowed. That's for sure. Organic food has become super popular, but it can be confusing to understand the organic food labels because the benefits and claims made by many growers are sometimes not very accurate and other times very accurate. So let's just be honest. I'm confused. How about you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So
what does organic mean in the context of food?
Well, I think the term organic refers to the way agricultural products are grown and processed, simply, right? So I think regulations vary from country to country, but in the good old US of A, organic crops must be grown without the use of synthetic pesticides, bioengineered genes like GMOs, which are outlawed in Europe, petroleum-based fertilizers, and sewage sludge-based fertilizers. Definitely create that category of not organic.
Gotcha.
But there are some differences for sure in organic versus non-organic. So let's look at some of the differences between organic and conventionally grown produce. So organic is grown with natural fertilizers like manure and compost, whereas conventionally grown produce typically are grown with synthetic or chemical fertilizers. When it comes to weeds, well, they're controlled naturally in an organic situation by crop rotation, hand weeding, mulching, and tilling, whereas the normal conventionally grown produce, weeds are controlled typically with chemical herbicides. When it comes to pests, they're typically controlled in the organic variety by using natural methods like birds, insects, and traps, where again, in the conventionally grown produce, pests are controlled with synthetic pesticides. So there definitely is a difference. Okay, so here's my top 3 reasons to love organics. Well, organic produce just simply contains fewer pesticides. Chemicals such as fungicides, herbicides, insecticides are widely used in conventional agriculture, and really the residue that remains is what I'm concerned about, and that remains on the food that we eat. Okay, reason number 2. Organic food is just simply often fresher because it doesn't contain any preservatives that make it last longer. Organic produce is often, but not always, produced on smaller farms near where it's sold. I find that true in my area. Lots of small, independent organic farmers growing small quantities, super fresh. And you can find them at the supermarket, but typically your farmer's market is where you'll find those growers. And again, like we talked about a couple weeks ago at the farmer's market, I love to talk to the farmer and ask him, what do you use to control weeds? How do you till your ground? And things like this. And the farmer loves to talk about topics like that. Okay, lastly, number 3, organic farming is better for the environment, simply put. Organic farming practices reduce pollution, they conserve water, reduce soil erosion, increase soil fertility, and simply use less energy, right? So let's just review. Organic produce contains fewer pesticides. Organic food is often fresher, and organic farming is better for the environment. What's not to love about organics?
So this is the perfect episode to answer this question via email from Jill in Dallas. She asks, does organic mean pesticide-free?
That's a great question. There are some benefits of eating organic, and one of them definitely is the lower levels of pesticide. However, some organic farmers do use pesticides. The difference is they're naturally derived, opposed to synthetic pesticides that typical farmers use. Again, it's buyer beware. There are some health risks to just about everything. But with that said, your exposure to harmful pesticides will be lower when eating organic. And remember this, farming without pesticides is also better for the nearby birds and animals, as well as the people that live close to the farms. So I'm all about less pesticides. I'm all about organic. So here's a few of my organic food buying tips. Number one, buy in season. Fruits and vegetables are always the cheapest and freshest when they're in season. So find out what produce is delivered to your market so that you're buying the freshest food possible. I like to shop around. Compare the price of organic items at the grocery store, the farmer's market, and other venues, even the freezer aisle. But why is organic food often more expensive? Well, organic food is more labor intensive since farmers do not use pesticides, chemical fertilizers, or drugs. Organic certification is expensive, and organic feed for animals can cost twice as much. Organic farms tend to be smaller than conventional farms, which means their fixed costs and overheads must be distributed across smaller produce volumes without government subsidies. I mean, it all goes back to supporting the local farmer.
This week's listener question comes from Gary in Sacramento. Chef Robert, is there a foolproof way to cook a hard-boiled egg?
Thanks, Gary, for your question. And your cookbook is on the way. Well, when it comes to boiling eggs, the biggest problem is that people can easily overcook them, leading to dark green edges around the yolk. It's really kind of yucky. So here's my method for how to cook hard-cooked eggs so they don't get overcooked and they're soft and delicious. Place the eggs in a single layer in the bottom of a thick saucepan. Cover with at least 1 to 2 inches of cold water. The more eggs that are crowding the pan, the more water you're going to need. So, eggs, pot, cold water. Heat the pot on high heat and bring the water to a boil, a rolling boil, good and hard. Now, I know some chefs that like to add about a half a teaspoon of salt to the water, which they think helps prevent cracking as well as making the eggs easier to peel. Maybe, maybe not. Give it a try. So depending on how cooked you like your hard-cooked eggs, the eggs should be done in about 10 to 12 minutes. With that said, depending on your altitude, the shape of the pan, the size of the eggs, the ratio of water, oh my gosh, this is like Albert Einstein's science class here. But really, it's not that big a deal. It can take a few minutes more or less. Just give it a try. Okay, take a deep breath. It really is easy. When your timer goes off, remove the pan from the heat, strain the water from the pan, and run cold water over the eggs to cool them quickly and stop them from cooking altogether. They should be eaten in about 5 days. But if you like deviled eggs, I'll post an amazing deviled egg recipe on my Facebook page as soon as we release this episode. You'll love it. It's my classic deviled egg recipe. Simple, easy, and delicious. Great question, Gary. Thanks for asking. You're listening to the Happy Diabetic Kitchen podcast. I'm your host, Chef Robert Lewis, the Happy Diabetic. Be sure to follow me at my Facebook page, facebook.com/Chef Robert Lewis, the Happy Diabetic. Or go to my homepage, happydiabetic.com, and you'll find all my social links at the top right-hand side of the page. And remember, if you have a question, go to my website, hit the contact button, send me a question to be answered during an upcoming podcast, and I will send you a free Happy Diabetic Cookbook of Love. Okay, now it's time for the listener survey. Here it is. What's your favorite cooking oil? For me, extra virgin olive oil. Head over to my website, happydiabetic.com, and select the Facebook link at the top right-hand side of the homepage. Head over and tell us what you think. Well, that was great. Thanks for hanging out. Our podcast is produced and engineered by Jason Lewis. Our theme music by the Happy Diabetic Blues Band. And yours truly, Chef Robert on the electric guitar. And of course, our kitchen mascots, Scout and Tucker. Thanks for tuning in. And let me leave you with this thought. Alton Brown once said, "A home cook who relies much on a recipe is sort of like a pilot who reads the plane's instruction manual while flying." So long for now, and remember, no one loves you more than me.